Modern man today gazes upon ancient structures like the pyramids of Giza or the temples of Angkor Wat with a childlike wonder and amazement. He cannot understand any being who is capable of such greatness and marvel, so he is tempted to attribute these masterpieces to something outside of himself. Unfortunately, until he looks within, the door will remain closed to him, for this is the only way he will ever understand this language, and that is exactly how it was intended. For only those who can speak the language of divine wisdom can access the hidden knowledge that has been encoded within these timeless masterpieces of the divine man. These ancient structures are time capsules built by divine man for himself, and they marked the constellations so he would remember the cycle he existed in and how that was connected to his soul and divine nature. The divine language encoded in these sacred sites tells a story about the divine children of the Creator. Their father goes by many names: Osiris, Odin, Zeus, Vishnu, but the one thing that will never change are his immortal children, the gods and goddesses of the white, red, yellow and black races. And they will be returned to their rightful places in due time, because as we know, everything happens according to law. These ancient markers and mythologies are the story of their creation and the great year cycle in which they exist. First, let us look at the temples of Angkor Wat and the secrets about divine man encoded in this alignment with the constellation Draco. The temples of Angkor represent one of humankind's most astonishing and enduring architectural achievements. The stone temples of Angkor Wat today are the surviving remains of a grand spiritual, social and administrative metropolis whose other buildings, the palaces, public buildings and houses, were built of wood and have long since decayed and disappeared. This is intended as divine man understands his place in the cycle, and the most important structures preserved through the cycle of time and the Iron Age are the stone markers of the stars. Using computer simulations, it has been shown that the ground plan of the Angkor complex, the terrestrial placement of its principal temples, mirrors the stars in the constellation of Draco at the time of spring equinox in 10,500 BC. This is showing a connection to what is known as the Silver Gate midway through the Great Year. This is directly connected to the illumination, divine man and woman, as Draco is connected to the tribe of the serpent, which is symbolic for the firstborn tribe of the north, the tribe of Jan. This is also why the north side of Giza aligns with the constellation Draco, because again it is showing a connection to the firstborn son of the Creator. The Angkor complex is also 72 degrees of longitude east of the pyramids of Giza, again showing there is a connection between these two ancient structures and these very important constellations. Approximately halfway through the Great Year cycle, the element of ether recedes to a point where it causes a huge shift. This topples divine man off his throne, and he must fight to keep his kingdoms, as the 144 divine tribes then begin their descent from the Silver Age and into the Iron Age as the ether continues to recede, until it is no longer present at all in the Iron Age, and they are no longer known amongst the mortals. This is why in the Norse and Celtic mythology they relate that nobody should ever turn a stranger from the door, as it could be a god in disguise. We also see the Buddhist statues with their eyes closed and smiling. To the vulgar and uninitiated, they mistake this for meditation, when in fact this is symbolic for the gods going to sleep, knowing they will awaken again when that time returns, and they are smiling about what they know, and how mortal man will be looking at them in the future in amazement, not understanding what they are actually looking at. This alignment to the constellation Draco and Angkor Wat is yet another fingerprint left by Divine Man, and he connected it to the Silver Gate of the Great Year to show a connection to this in the cycle of Divine Man and his illumination and his time of forgetting, because he knew there would be a time when access to this knowledge did not come so easily. He ensured he encoded his divine nature and geometry into symbolic archetypes and stories of everything around him in his natural environment. He knew he would instinctively look to his environment again when he began to awaken from his slumber, and this is also the case with Angkor Wat, where we see the sacred numbers of Divine Man encoded into these ancient structures. At the temple of Phnom Bagheng, there are 108 surrounding towers. The number 108 is connected to the creation of the gold and silver tribes. The 96 is showing the 48 gold tribes and the 48 silver tribes. However, if you account for each Messiah tribe and their firstborn divinely seeded offspring, you get 4 times the Trinity, which is 12. And so this makes 108. 4, 96, and 12 are 108. There are also 36 tribes in each of the races, and this equates to 72 individual souls. 36 and 72 are 108. This number was left so that it was known to be associated with Divine Man and not only the measurements of the cycles and ages. However, these measurements are also important, so the 72 can also be seen as connected to the movement of the constellations through the Great Year, which is known as the precession, the alteration of the position of the constellations over a period of 25,920 years, or 26,000 years. 1 degree every 72 years. So now we have an understanding for the connection to Draco. We can look to the other significant constellation positioned northwest of Draco called Cygnus. The constellation Cygnus, like the belt stars of Orion, also align with the 3 pyramids of Giza, and this is because Orion and Cygnus are both connected to the creation of Divine Man and Woman. For at the tail of Cygnus, near the brightest star Deneb, lies the entrance to the dark rift, and it is through the dark rift that Divine Man were originally seeded from the Creator and birthed through, and where they will return at the end of a 26,000-year ethereal cycle, when they experience ascension and divine union again with their Creator. We see the story of their creation and the connection to Cygnus in Leda the swan, who is said to have been seduced by Zeus, symbolic for Orion, after which Leda gives birth to eggs of which Castor and Pollux and their female twins, Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra, are hatched from. As mentioned before, both the constellations of Cygnus and Orion align with the pyramids of Giza. However, not only do the belt stars of Orion align with the 3 pyramids, but the south side of the Great Pyramid aligns with the shaft to the King's Chamber and Orion, and then reflects out the north side and up to Thuban, a former pole star of the north, positioned at the tail of Draco. This is symbolically related to the first pillar from Ketha in the north and the tribe of Dan, and the root Malkuth, which the south and the tribe of Reuben represents. This alignment represents Orion, the Creator, anchored onto foundation at Malkuth and reflecting back up to Ketha in the north, and the north reflecting back, showing they are mirrored. Then we have Sirius reflecting through the Queen's Chamber to Ursa Minor, acknowledging the creation of God's firstborn daughter and her divine sisters. Ursa Minor is known as the smaller she-bear constellation. The mythology of the Great Bear is also connected to Orion, so we have yet another confirmation of the importance these constellations and mythologies have in connection with divine man. So we can see divine man left his fingerprint upon the Giza pyramids too, for again they encoded their story and who they were into these markers and aligned them with the constellations. And yet there is more to be found hidden in these ancient markers of time. Many think the Great Pyramid is only four-sided, but if you look closer, you will see each side of the pyramid has been divided to represent each Messiah tribe. So the pyramid can be seen as both four-sided or eight-sided. And the outside of the Great Pyramid has 144,000 casing stones. This represents the weight of mortal man that comes through with them into Zep Tepi. We can also align the Golden Mean Spiral to the Giza Plateau and how the pyramids and other sacred sites were placed. We are being shown the emanation of divine man through intermediate consciousness, just like an anchor being thrown onto foundation. It is the gold tribes that are the first to touch down, then silver, and finally the bronze tribes who are seeded through the gold and silver. For we are only able to reunite with our Creator at one time in the cycle at the end of the great year. All other times we can only reach Source through intermediate consciousness. This is also like a membrane of neutral consciousness between us and God. This is what Thoth, Moses, and also Hermes symbolises. The Sphinx is also positioned in the way it is to show the distinction between the gold and silver tribes who are created of God both ethereally and physically, and the bronze tribe who are ethereally seeded of God but born of material birth on foundation. The Sphinx represents the divine tribes when seen as one race, as divine man are of this world, just as the creatures are, hence why they are represented by them in the symbolism. So we can see there is no need to look externally for explanations on who built these magnificent structures. It was divine man, in a time when he was in his element and able to work with the forces of nature, not against them as modern man does. And divine man has left his mark everywhere upon this world as a reminder to mortals that they will return again, for everything happens according to law.